There is a world that exists just beneath the surface of the one you know. It operates with its own laws, its own courts, its own economy. It has ranks, it has rituals, it has a language spoken, not in words but in silences, in nods, in the way a man crosses a room. I know this world, not because I read about it, because I lived inside it, from the very bottom, sweeping cigarette, ash off concrete floors, to the very top, where decisions are made that change the lives of thousands of people who never know your name. This is my life, every rank, every lesson, every cost. I was 14 when I first understood that the neighborhood had rules, that no one wrote down, but everyone followed. You didn't cross certain streets after dark. You didn't ask why certain shops never got robbed. You didn't look too long at the black cars parked outside the social club on Mulberry Street. These were the invisible fences of my childhood, and I had grown up so inside them that I barely noticed they were there. My uncle was the one who first introduced me to the edges of that world, not formally. He never sat me down and explained anything. He simply started bringing me along to pick up envelopes, to deliver boxes, to stand outside a door and watch. I was a boy who needed watching himself, but no one seemed to notice that part. They only saw that I was quiet, that I was loyal, and that I had the specific kind of stillness that the streets reward. The first rank they gave me had no official title. They called boys like me associates, errand runners, ghost labor. You were connected enough to be useful, but not enough to be trusted. You swept floors, you washed cars, you stood at the back of rooms where important men spoke, and you did not breathe too loud. You learned, above all else, to observe without appearing to observe. That skill, the ability to absorb everything while registering nothing, that became the foundation of everything I would later become. I carried messages, I picked up dry cleaning. I stood outside restaurants in January cold for 3 hours because someone inside needed to know if a certain man arrived or didn't arrive. I was paid in cash, always in small bills, always handed over without ceremony, the way you'd tip a valet. But I wasn't doing it for the money. I was doing it because I could feel, even then, that I was being watched, that every errand was a test. I didn't fully understand yet. The first time I saw real violence, I was 16. A man owed money, not enormous money. Enough to matter, but not enough that it should have gone that far. I was outside in the alley, told to stay there, told to watch. The street, I heard what happened through a thin wall. The sounds are not something I will describe. What I will tell you is that when the men came back out, they were calm. One of them straightened his collar. Another lit a cigarette. Nobody said a word, and I understood in that moment that this world didn't run on rage. It ran on mathematics. Violence was a tool like any other. Cold, calculated, applied only when the numbers made sense. I became a soldier at 19. That was when I was formally brought in, made in the language they use. There was a ceremony, small room, candles, a card. With the saint's image burned in your hands, a blood oath, words repeated, in a dialect I barely spoke. It was ancient, it was absurd maybe, to someone looking in from outside, but inside that room it was the most serious moment of my life up to that point. I was being handed something, a name, a protection, a set of obligations that would last until I died. As a soldier, your job is simple and it is everything. Earn for the family and protect its interests. You run your own small operations under the supervision of a capo. You collect debts. You manage street-level business. You are the enforcement layer of a machine built on fear and on the very human need to belong to something larger than yourself. The money is better now. The respect is real, but so is the danger. I had 3 close calls in my first 2 years as a soldier. 2 were from outside, rival interests, territorial disputes. One was from inside, which was worse, a misunderstanding over a number. Someone thought I had skimmed. I hadn't. But the accusation alone meant I had to sit across a table from men who were deciding whether I would leave that room walking. I told the truth calmly, without defensiveness, because defensiveness looks like guilt. I laid out every dollar, every movement, every decision. They believed me, or they decided believing me was more useful than not. Either way, I walked out. That experience taught me the single most important lesson of this life. The truth is not what happened. The truth is what the most powerful man in the room decides happened. You can be right and still lose. You can be guilty and still survive. The currency is not justice. The currency is usefulness. I moved up to capo in my mid-20s. A capo commands a crew, 10 to 30 men, depending on the family, depending on the territory. You are now management. You are responsible for what your soldiers earn, for their discipline, for their problems, and for making sure that the percentage that flows up to the boss arrives, on time and in full, regardless of what is happening at your level. Your soldiers' failures are your failures. Their arrests are your exposure. You become, for the first time, genuinely responsible for other people's lives in both directions, keeping them earning and keeping them alive. The administrative weight of that rank surprised me. I had imagined power as freedom. Instead, it was more obligation, more phone calls at 3 in the morning, more problems that required quiet solutions. A soldier gets arrested. You handle the lawyer, you handle the family, you make sure no one talks. A territory dispute emerges. You sit across from the other capo. Find language that lets both sides feel they've won, because the alternative is a war that nobody at the top wants. You become a diplomat operating under the constant assumption that diplomacy has a hard floor, and below that floor is a resolution that nobody survives. I learned to read rooms at that level, in a way I never had before. When you're a soldier, you read for danger. When you're a capo, you read for power dynamics. Who defers to whom? Who laughs too hard at the boss's jokes? Who is building something? And who is coasting? Who is loyal from belief and who is loyal from fear? Fear loyalty breaks the moment the fear shifts. Belief loyalty is rarer and worth everything. The consigliere position was never something I sought. It came to me after a period of demonstrated judgment. Several decisions I made that prevented larger problems, a negotiation I handled between two families that had been circling each other for months, an internal matter I resolved without escalating it. The boss began to call me separately before the larger meetings. He wanted to know what I thought. Before he decided what he thought, that is what a consigliere does. You are the one honest voice in a room full of men who tell the boss what he wants to hear. You tell him what he needs to hear. That is either the most valuable position in the organization or the most dangerous, depending on whether the boss is the kind of man who can tolerate the truth. I served as consigliere for 4 years. I watched decisions get made. I shaped many of them. I prevented some catastrophes and failed to prevent others. I learned that at that altitude, the threats are no longer primarily physical. They are institutional, law enforcement, government pressure. The kind of slow, patient work that builds a case over years, waits until it is airtight, and then dismantles an entire structure with a series of indictments delivered. On a single Tuesday morning, the underboss position is the one that taught me what loneliness actually means. You are now the second most powerful person in the organization. Every decision that isn't made by the boss passes through you. Every problem that the capos cannot solve arrives on your desk. You are also, by definition, a target from the outside, because taking you down strikes at the heart of the operation, and from the inside, because ambition is not something that disappears simply because you've instructed men to suppress it. Someone is always watching you the way you once watched the men above you. I had to make decisions at that level that I will not catalog here, because some things belong only to the weight of your own conscience and not to the architecture of a story. What I will say is that I learned the difference between a powerful man and a dangerous man. Powerful men have resources, Dangerous men have nothing left to lose. The most dangerous person I ever faced in 30 years was not a rival, not a federal agent, not a man with a gun. It was a man who had already decided he was going to die and was only choosing. The boss. When it finally came to me, not through a coup, not through violence, but through the natural order of succession, when the man above me chose to retire into something quieter, I understood immediately why men in that position age faster than anyone else. The boss carries the weight of every person under him. Their earnings are your responsibility. Their exposure is your exposure. Their families, when things go wrong, come to you, and things always eventually go wrong. You also carry the politics of the larger world, the relationships with other families, the arrangements with certain officials, the understanding with certain industries. You are running an economy, a parallel economy built on the same human motivations as the legitimate one: fear of scarcity, desire for security, the need for belonging and status, but operating without courts, without contracts, without any recourse except the kind that ends careers and sometimes lives, the thing no one tells you about. Reaching the top is how much of your time is spent managing the past. Every decision made before you are boss, by the men before you, by your own hands when you were coming up, those decisions have consequences that arrive on delayed schedules. Something done 10 years ago surfaces now as a problem you must solve. You are always at that level, solving yesterday's problems with today's resources, while trying not to create tomorrow's catastrophes. I'm older now. I'm not going to tell you exactly where I am or what I'm doing now, because some habits survive the life that created them. But I will tell you this: every rank taught me something that the rank before it could not have taught me. The streets taught me patience and observation. The soldier years taught me that loyalty has a price and a limit. The capo years taught me that responsibility is not a reward, it is a burden you earn. The consigliere years taught me that truth is the rarest currency in rooms full of powerful men. The underboss years taught me that loneliness is not the absence of people, it is the presence of people who need something from you. And the years at the top taught me something I did not expect. They taught me that the entire structure, the ranks, the rituals, the oaths sworn over burning saints, all of it is just one more version of what human beings have always built. A system to manage fear, a hierarchy to give order to chaos, a language of loyalty, because loyalty is the only thing that holds against the entropy of self-interest. The Italian-American families that built those structures were not exceptional in their ambition. They were exceptional in their discipline, in the specificity of their code, in the willingness to enforce it absolutely. And that discipline, that code, it was both what made them powerful and what ultimately made them fragile, because a code only works when everyone believes in it. And eventually, somewhere in every organization, someone stops believing. I climbed every rank of that world. I stood in every room. I made every kind of decision. And I am still here, which means either I was very good at what I did or I was very lucky, and I have spent enough years thinking about that question to know the honest answer is both, and that neither one is something you can fully control. The world beneath the surface still exists. It is smaller. Now, in some ways, more careful, more patient. It adapted, as it always has, to the pressure applied against it. And somewhere in that world right now, there is a 14-year-old boy standing outside a door, watching a street, learning without being taught, being tested without being told, carrying the first envelope of what will become a long and heavy life. I know exactly what he is feeling, because I was him, and I became everything that came after.